Hey, what's up guys? I'm KBHD here. So I've been using the iPhone 11 Pro for about 6-7 months now, maybe a little longer than that. Doesn't sound like that long, but for this weird world I live in where I'm switching between smartphones all the time, testing all these different ones, that's kind of a long time actually for me to be using one phone. OnePlus 8 Pro in the other pocket for those of you who know about the whole dual smartphone situation. So I figured, you know what, let's do a longer term review. This is something I've seen a lot more actually on YouTube and I really like it, so I'm jumping in. But the original review is usually shot after 1 to 2 weeks of using the phone, and there's only so much you can pick up in that time. And inevitably after that, I try to tweet new things that I find, but there are new findings and new things that you learn about a phone that you want to share. You should follow me on Twitter if you want to see those things when I do share them, but that's what this is about. So why not take a second look at one of the phones that seems to come up all the time, months after it comes out. This is the iPhone 11 Pro revisited, plus a look forward at iPhone 12. Okay, so one of the things you can get a pretty good idea of when the phone first comes out is build quality. Not just how it feels in the hand, but like really how well it's actually built. And iPhones have a pretty good track record, at least as of late, of lasting a long time, but they're also glass, and glass is glass. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again until it's no longer true. I don't use a case on my phone, never really have. So this phone just travels around just like this. So this iPhone's been in pockets, in gym bags with cleats, in backpacks, in car cup holders. It gets tossed around a lot and put in a lot of different places. Now, the stainless steel on the sides has held up great. Looks almost exactly like it did the day I got the phone, which you might expect. And the matte finish on the back has done a good job of hiding some of those micro scratches, a lot better than a glossier phone would. But the front glass, not so much. Some phones get this worse than others, and from my experience, iPhones tend to get these micro scratches more easily, but you can see on my iPhone a lot of visible scratches all over the display. Not so bad that it would, actually interrupt the viewing experience like a crack, but they add up as the phone gets used more and more. Now, I'm going to say a lot of these are because I tend to put my phone face down on my desk and on counters and other places around me, and we know there's plenty of dust and random grit that can just happen to get under there and cut the glass of the phone, but it just seems like it's worse on the iPhone than other phones I've used, so I'm going to try to get out of the laying the phone down, face down habit. Internal specs have held up pretty much perfectly, and this is what I'm talking about in the initial review when I say it's got tons of performance headroom. Because out the box, of course, every phone feels great, and the iPhone is one of the fastest feeling phones, 1, 2, 6 months later. But that's a sort of a trajectory for the 2 years, 3 years, 4 years later when it's still one of the fastest feeling 2, 3, 4-year-old phones. That's thanks to the A13 Bionic and 4 gigs of RAM, which don't look like huge specs on paper, but this phone is on pace to be doing just fine in 4 years. Okay, pop quiz. What's rule number 1 of buying a new piece of tech? Never buy a piece of tech like this based on the promise of future software updates to come. Never do that. Just buy it for what it is today, and if it happens to get better over the years, then that's a bonus. That I think especially applies to iPhones because they never really add any crazy features like the way, Android used to be when they would just change everything with a new software update. But it's mostly been minor tweaks and bug fixes. It's definitely more stable now. iOS 13, when it first launched, had a good amount of bugs, and they've been ironing those out. I had this weird bug with Gmail attachments, but that's now fixed. Other than that, not too wild. In a way, it's kind of boring, actually, if you're hoping for something transformative and new in the software, but that's not really what I get my hopes up for on an iPhone. Now, the announcements on stage and the way they talk so smoothly about how everything's so magical, they might fool you a little bit. Like, remember the U1 chip in this phone? Remember that? About you could point your iPhone at another AirDrop device and it would just show up on the top of the list. That hasn't really ever materialized. Oh, and another big one was Deep Fusion. Remember Deep Fusion? There's a whole thing on stage about how a software update coming later to this new iPhone would bring Deep Fusion for improved detail and less noise and better sharpness in medium lighting. Now, this wasn't low light. That would be night mode. And night mode's pretty great on this phone, but it's not that. And it wasn't highlight either. It wasn't normal daytime photos. HDR and all of that takes care of it great, but this was for medium light. Well, the iPhone definitely got this software update, and it definitely has Deep Fusion now. And I definitely can't tell the difference. And it doesn't even really tell you which photos were taken with Deep Fusion on and which ones are just regular photos. So yeah, I guess the point here is to say at the end of the day, it's just good old familiar iOS running on the iPhone just like we all expected. There are some new features here and there, but again, not too many surprises here. And yes, the cameras are still really good. I've been taking great photos all the time in the months since this phone came out. And also pretty much every video you've seen on my socials, Twitter or Instagram, and every time I go live on Instagram, they are, with almost no exceptions, all from the iPhone. iOS 13.2, they finally listened and put video resolution and frame rate controls in the camera app. They're a little hard to press, but you can go from 30 to 60 to 24 and 4K to HD. Finally. Okay, a couple other smaller things. Battery life has stayed really good. I switched actually to the smaller iPhone 11 Pro. I had the 11 Pro Max for almost my entire use, but I guess when I reviewed the iPhone SE, it kind of got me missing smaller iPhones for a while. So for the first time in a long time, I'm not using the absolute biggest available version of a phone. I'm using the smaller iPhone 11 Pro now. And I was wrong about 3D Touch. I miss 3D Touch. 3D Touch was one of those things that, it was the pressure sensitivity of underneath the screen. Apple no longer makes any devices that support 3D Touch anymore. They've gone back to just haptic touch, which is just basically a long press, and it's nowhere near as good. 3D Touch, while it wasn't necessarily taken advantage of by every single developer, it was actually a really well done and uniquely iPhone feature. It set them apart, where haptic touch, it's basically just that long press, and it's much slower than the pressure sensitivity was. So I'm not sure I wouldn't trade some extra thickness to get 3D Touch back, and I don't think I'm alone there. And then Face ID, we're all super used to what Face ID is by now, but it was supposed to get improvements and be better with this new iPhone. It's still really good, but I think it would feel magical. It would feel amazing if they could do just a couple little things, namely shrinking the notch and making it work from more angles, like from this sideways angle. Doesn't work when it's this far off. And when it's sideways and upside down and other angles, it's not quite as good. So actually, it doesn't work at all when it's upside down. So Face ID could be more magical, Tim, if you're listening. But actually, Tim, I hope you're not listening, because let's use that as a way to segue into looking forward a bit at the iPhone 12. When you think about it, this phone can look a little bit dated, can feel a bit dated. It's got those rounded corners. It's got the biggest notch in any phone. It's still got the proprietary port at the bottom. It's still got a 60 hertz screen. It is one of the fastest feeling phones with a 60 hertz screen, thanks to the 120 hertz touch refresh rate, but it is still 60 hertz, and of course, no 5G. Now, iPhone 12 rumors floating around right now point to the boxier shape similar to the iPad Pro. Super looking forward to that. 5G should be added as well, and adding that LiDAR scanner from the iPad Pro. A classic case of the customer paying for a feature they may not ever use just because it comes built into the phone. But now there's a whole new lineup of iPhones planned at various price points, which are really interesting to me, all of which should have 5G. So I'm curious, which one of these do you think you would get? Look, today, iPhone 11 Pro, as a flagship, it's kind of in this weird place because Apple never updates their prices. This phone launched at $1,000, upgrade it for $1,100, and it still costs $1,100. And till the day the next phone comes out in September or October, it will still cost $1,100. This phone was a pretty good buy when it came out, but if you can wait, if you've waited this long and you haven't bought a new iPhone yet, if you can keep waiting to the iPhone 12, I think that's the move. I think that's the one to wait for. That's the one I'm excited about. That's the one I can't wait to upgrade to with that new shape. But until then, this has been a pretty damn good phone for the months it's been out. Till then, thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.